Welcome to the Heal with Kelly podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan-Gorse, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful journey of remembering our divine nature and tapping into the truths that shall set us free. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Today is a very special episode because I have my beautiful friend on, Aaron Lazar. Hopefully you all know him by now, but he is, with an extraordinary passion and grace, an award-winning actor and singer who inspires audiences with the impossible dream, his musical journey of healing in the face of ALS. Aaron is a Grammy-nominated, SAG Award winner, and Drama Desk Award nominee who has starred in 11 Broadway productions. He debuted in The Phantom of the Opera, one of my personal faves, originated roles in the world premieres of The Tale of Two Cities, Impressionism, and The Last Ship, starred in the revivals of A Little Night Music and Les Miserables, and romanced audiences in The Light in the Piazza at Lincoln Center and Live from Lincoln Center on PBS. His acting credits and singing credits go on and on and on. But we are here to talk today about all of that and this diagnosis of ALS that he received in January of 2022. So we are 3 years in. And look at you. You just are so inspiring. You've since become a prominent advocate and keynote speaker on adversity as a catalyst to change and healing and the spiritual mindset of health. So let's just dive in. I mean, you have a BA in music and pre-med from Duke and an MFA from the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, where you were recently honored with the prestigious CATS Alumni Award. You live in LA, like me, with your two boys. And the most exciting thing is your album, Impossible Dream, which we will talk about, is nominated for the Best Traditional Pop Album at the upcoming Grammy Awards. So let's talk about all of it. Where should we begin?
Well, hi, because I'm like your biggest fan, and I was so excited to meet you. I don't even know when we met. I feel like it's been at least a year, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
And I find your light so inspiring and contagious, and I'm just like so grateful that we got to connect. And um, I've been to events that you've hosted, and I've followed your career, and I'm just honored to be a guest on your show. So thanks for having me.
It's truly my honor. I look at you. I think I reached out to you on Instagram because you kind of came out about your diagnosis, and I was like, wow, anything that I can do to help this beautiful soul, I want to help in any way I can, because you are in the fire. You're handling it with so. I remember our first conversation on the phone, and you were just handling it with such grace and vulnerability and honesty, and like you're doing everything that I would do given the same set of circumstances. And so, yeah, I would love to know, I guess, what life was looked like leading up to the diagnosis, and how that all went down, and what shifted.
Sure. Yeah, I know we connected on Instagram, and my Instagram got hacked last month, and it's in like Instagram purgatory where I can't access it, and some putz in Europe is trying to extort money from me. Like it's like a whole, I
Okay.
totally got fished. It's like a whole thing.
I'm sorry, but the karma on that one, like for them to like hack your account, which you're already going
I know.
through,
And so, and I was like, I mean, not that we want to spend any time talking about this guy, but first of all, for people who get hacked, there's no, I just learned, unless you're a paid blue check, I'm a blue check on Instagram, but like, unless you're a paid blue check, which I don't even know is a thing, there's no customer service at all. So if you're a paid blue check, you get customer service, people help you with this kind of thing. But if not, like I have, people like you, friends that are super connected in Hollywood. And I'm like, you guys must know somebody who can help me get my account back. And they're like, this is awful. And it's just the way it goes. And so anyway, I hope people will end up following me on Instagram at some point when I get that account back. But I was going to look up how we connected. So if you reached out to me, thank you. Cause I would have thought I reached out to you. Um, anyway, not important, but, yeah, I'm preparing a speech. I'm going to Dallas to give a speech on Monday. So, well, a couple of days from now. And I I wrote this for the first time about a year and a half ago. I've been traveling the country for a year and a half. And every time I do it, I update it. And the most recent update talking about diagnosis, I'm like, it's interesting. And you're good buddies with Rob. And Rob hates that word diagnosis, right? He's like, it's an opinion. It's somebody's opinion. And I'm like, right, it is. And as I was working on the speech for this upcoming event, I realized I got the quote unquote diagnosis, but then I went and got what? A second opinion. So the diagnosis really is a first opinion,
Totally.
but we give words meaning and then we take them on and then it affects us. It affects the environment that our cells are, you know, living in. So I will say, before the doctors gave me their opinion, life was, I was 45, two kids. I think my kids were, well, that was what, it's 3.5, whatever years ago. So my kids were like 10 and 12, something like that. Um, and I was in the best shape of my life since I was an athlete in college. Career was going fantastically well, starring in a new television series, which I had kind of worked my whole life to land like a series regular job on a television show. But the pandemic had just happened. So everybody was going through craziness. And we were doing our best. It was, some anxiety with the kids and school was weird. I mean, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Um, I was dating, I was dating someone and we'd been together for about a year. So this is about a year into the pandemic. And we broke up, just totally different life goals. And I found myself in a really spiritual like moment of it was like an epiphany and it didn't feel great. It was an epiphany that like here I am again alone, and even though I'm in a new place and I've got money in my bank account, the TV show had come and gone on the air already. I was quote unquote unemployed again as an actor, and I felt like I was in this pattern and I was just unhappy. And it was like an awareness about it that, oh, this is a pattern and I don't want to live this way anymore. And it was a very deep recognition that something was off and it kept happening over and over and over. And I had gotten divorced at that point about 5 years before, and it was a very traumatic experience. Um, and so the whole point of me with this lead up is that I stood in my kitchen and I asked God to show me how to love myself. Like, I don't even know where the question came from. I think it came from, the relationship that had just ended. I had felt genuine love from that person and had kind of a weird sense that that person loved me more than I loved myself. And how is that possible? And it was just kind of weird. So I asked God how to love myself, and 2 weeks later, my muscles started twitching. And it was a terrifying 9 months of you Google muscle twitches and Stephen Hawking comes up. So it was a terrifying 9 months of, do I have ALS? Do I not? The doctors all said I did not. Um, but I knew something was wrong. And then I thought, well, is it all just a giant spiritual level up? Like I asked for it. And like, who do you talk who do you talk to about that? You walk into a neurologist's office and they're like, what's been going on? And you're like, well, I asked God to show me how to love myself. They look at you cross-eyed and they're like, okay, so let's get to the science,
Yeah.
you know? And so, I mean, that's the beginning. I'll
Yeah.
stop there.
Yeah. So from that point, and you, I think you mentioned that like maybe they thought it was Lyme, and maybe they thought because all of these kind of mystery illnesses.
Yeah, I mean, they thought it was benign fasciculation cramp syndrome, where you just have muscle fasciculations, twitches, and muscle cramping, and there's nothing to do about it. They just send you home and say ignore it, um, because you can't diagnose ALS with one symptom, and that was the only symptom I had. Although to me, I was losing weight, and they were like, "Yeah, it's because of the anxiety and the insomnia," and like there was no really real way to understand what was happening. Over the years since, you go, well, is it Lyme? And you go through all of the expensive Lyme tests, and is it mold? And is it? I mean, you know, you try and they do the specialists do a significant amount of testing to give you that official opinion, spinal taps and electroshock tests and all kinds of stuff to really, there's so much that can go wrong with the nervous system. And it was not a system that I knew anything about, right? I was like a muscle and bone guy
Mhm.
who, if I had anything wrong with me in my life, it was I broke this or I tore that, and you know, in and out, fix it up, back on stage or back on camera and back in the gym. So this was a whole new set of like, oh wow, like I have a nervous system and it can malfunction. And how does that happen?
Mhm. So then I just like want to go on this journey because this is I mean, I would say the fear that is attached to this and the kind of hopelessness that is attached to this particular diagnosis is the biggest challenge a human can overcome, right? And every time I talk to you, it feels like every step along the way, you've just up leveled or pulled back a layer of this new understanding and connection to yourself. So I do see you unfolding on this journey and falling deeper in love with yourself. And so I'd love for you just to kind of share with the audience, just walk us through the last 3 years, understanding, okay, maybe this is God giving me what I asked for, how that's anchored you through what some of the dark valleys have been, and some of these modalities, mindsets, things that you've applied that have helped, things that you have applied that weren't for you, and just where you're at today. I would love for you to just take us on the journey if you don't mind, and I'll pepper in when I feel
Yeah,
inspired.
please feel free to just shut me up because I
No,
think
I'm so in
yeah.
awe. I really want to. Yeah, you're one of the most courageous humans and such a positive light. And for you to 3 years later be still so positive and traveling the world and inspiring other people, and it's just I have no words.
Um, well, I think I was so it was about 9 months of symptoms without really knowing. And then 3 years ago, get a diagnosis. And then um, I just, having been so afraid for 9 months, like that roller coaster. I had never experienced anxiety and insomnia and depression before, except after my divorce, and it lasted for like 3 weeks. You know, I thought it was like, oh, marriage suddenly over, my whole life turned upside down. Boys were 5 and 7. I'm, you know, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am when I'm not a full-time dad or husband, let alone dealing with an acting career. So if you're an unemployed, whatever, like, who are you? Who am I? What is my worth? What is my value as a human being to this world? Well, it was clearly dependent upon my roles as a dad and a husband. And now that was taken away from me, or so I labeled it. Right. And so that was terrible anxiety and insomnia and depression, where I didn't realize the mind was capable of getting stuck in a place that's like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But, I did what I had always done in my life up to that point, was just push through. I mean, that's what most people do. I got totally jacked in CrossFit. We just worked out like a beast. Tried to make the best of it and ended up getting through it. So I bring that up because a good 5 years went by where I had thought the anxiety and the insomnia. I mean, I had paranoia. There was a lot of stuff going on that I was like, this is just what happens when you go through something awful like this. And I'm a sensitive dude, and I didn't realize the effect it would have on me, and like whatever, and my adrenals. And that was as far as I thought. It was that, like, I probably burned out my adrenals, and I would take some adrenaline support and just try but my energy was always good. But here I was dealing with anxiety, insomnia, and depression again. And it reminded me of after the divorce, except this time it wouldn't stop. I mean, it was a month straight first, and then a doctor put me on Lexapro, um, which I had all kinds of stigmas against taking any kind of drugs, for my brain. I didn't want to mess with my brain. I didn't want to feel like I needed to, I have a best friend who I grew up manic depressive bipolar. I saw with those drugs and how they affected him. I was just freaked out, man. But eventually the Lexapro worked, and I started to live with benign fasciculation cramp syndrome, um, which is just muscles twitching all the time. So my whole point in that is just by the time I got to a doctor saying, you have this, I had been so afraid chronically for so long. It was so exhausting that I was like, I'm done with fear. I don't have the energy to be afraid anymore. Like, I don't. Like, I don't. It's like fear stopped. And I just kind of knew that had to happen. That was like step one. And then the next 3 years, very briefly to sum it up, where there was some intuition. There was a voice within me that was like, I'm going to beat it. I don't know how. I got to figure out how I got it. And the doctors are like, well, there's no explanation for that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean there's no explanation? They're like, this is a disease. If you don't have the genetic kind, it's called sporadic ALS. Patients that have that, there's no explanation. No gene associated with the disease, no explanation for its development. And I'm like, guys, pre-med at Duke, come from a family of Jewish hypochondriacs. No, like, no explanation does not fly. I'm going to figure this out. Like, you're telling me there's no medicine. There was a medicine you could take to slow it down. Cut to 2 years later, the FDA pulls that from the market. It fails phase 3 trials. There's like nothing. There's nothing for this, right? Except, like you mentioned, just bleak, hopeless, awful, collective consciousness, and doctors who just are, there's so many hardworking, well-meaning people out there, and hundreds of millions of dollars being spent to find a drug. But I was like, I can't wait. So what am I going to do? And I just started reading books, Kelly, which is how I came across your work and your documentary. Started reading books, watching videos, watching movies on healing the nervous system. I spent, at least 2 years, read over 100 books, doctors, yogis, spiritual teachers, renowned scientists. Um, and I started to become aware of myself in a very different way, right? Which is where you can call it spirituality or just the quantum or conscious. It's just consciousness. I just became aware that I am the awareness that I am, right? What God said to Moses at the burning bush, I am that I am. I became aware of it. Eckhart Tolle talks about this when he started to become suicidal and woke up one morning and was like, he's like, I don't love myself. And then he's like, who's the I that's saying that? Like, it's that moment where you're like, who am I really?
Mm.
And so then I started to get really jazzed because everything I was reading, it was like food for my soul. It felt like pure truth and it made sense. And I had studied spirituality and tried to like get it and figure it out for like a good decade prior and would read Eckhart's books and listen to Joel Osteen all the time and Oprah's Super Soul, whatever I could do. And I would be inspired sometimes, but it never integrated and felt like I got it. And now everything was feeling like I got it.
Because you think you were in a more open, hungry, like edge state?
I I think yes. I think I had no choice. Your life's on the line. And I mean, I was just also graced with that by God, source energy, universe, whatever you want to call it. Like it was just the moment. And so for a year and a half, I didn't tell my kids what was going on. I was like, I'm just going to heal myself. Um, the physical, degeneration of the motor neurons was slow enough at that point that they didn't really see anything other than dad having some problems with my legs, or then wearing leg braces. But I was still able to do a lot. Um, and I learned so much about what felt so deeply truthful to me and helpful to me and healing to me that I was like, I got to share this with people somehow. And that's when my buddy saw me talking to somebody at a party and was like, people are just riveted when you're speaking. Like, we should throw an event and you should just talk. I just started talking in people's living rooms and I wrote this thing that became a speaking platform. I sing in it and it's called The Impossible Dream because I sing the iconic song from the Man of La Mancha, The Impossible Dream throughout, which is a whole another amazing, not coincidental kind of mystical connection of I'm 24 years old and I'm playing the lead in that musical in grad school and I'm singing that song, and the audience is rising in applause and I'm crying on stage because I realized in that moment my impossible dream of becoming a professional actor was coming true. And then I don't sing that song again at all. I mean, my whole career, I never auditioned with it. I never sing it, nothing. And for whatever reason, 3 months before I'm speaking in people's living rooms, I need a song to add in a concert in New York. And the conductor goes, do you know The Impossible Dream? And I'm like, yeah. So I'm singing with the American Pops Orchestra. And as I'm singing the song on stage, I have another one of those moments of holy shit, this song is my life right now.
Mm.
And so I use that song as like the core. I mean, the lyrics of the song for people that don't know are to dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause, to reach the unreachable stars, basically.
I mean,
And
come on. This is
it's
crazy.
unbelievable. So I told my kids what was going on and said, I'm going to start sharing this with people. And by that point, they were like, are you going to die? And I was like, not anytime soon. And they're like, cool. And they ran out to play. And so it was like, I had agonized about telling them for like a year and a half, but I still hadn't talked about it publicly. I just had no need. And then a year ago, just a year ago, actually, almost to the day, uh, crazy. It might literally be to the day. A buddy of mine had a very, very niche podcast for musical theater nerds and musical theater fans. And he's like, do you want to come on and speak? And I'm like, yeah. And I thought, well, it'll be interesting for me to tell my story and hear what that sounds like. And it's safe because it's such a small audience. And meanwhile, that story somehow broke to the Broadway mainstream media channels. And the next thing I know, it was out there. And then it's been a totally wild year since. But that's kind of the high altitude of what's been going on.
All the lyrics in the song is exactly what I've always kind of in the healing space. I'm like, ALS is the one I want to crack. ALS is the holy grail of like, know thyself, you know, and what is this human experience? And so where are you at physically and then mentally and emotionally today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't talk much about the physical. It's very, very challenging. I'm in a wheelchair, basically, you know, I'm seated all day. I can stand up with assistance to do basic things for maybe 30 seconds. And yeah, it's become, I need full-time help. My parents have been living with me for a couple months. They're amazing. They're like the best support network ever. But you just you get used to allowing people to help you. And there's so many indignities, and there's so many things where you're like, I just want to do that by myself or for myself. But, again, this is like this is the main thing that I am so excited to be healed and back on my feet teaching all over the world, because I have come to know truth. And here's what it is. When I spend time in the quote unquote reality of ALS, the mind wants to make sense of it, and it is incomprehensible. So the mind cannot make some sense of something that makes no sense, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm a smart guy, which makes it even worse. Like a psychic once said to me, amazing psychic, she was like, you gotta dumb down a little bit. It'll make it a little easier on yourself. Like you're a very logical guy. And that's helped me in a lot of ways, but it also, in this sense, it's this realization that like the mind will try and make sense of something that makes no sense, and then it will just keep going. And that spins from, oh, this thing isn't working today. Let's say it's my thumb, right? Like I can't move my thumb. This one goes, it doesn't straighten, like little shit like that, right? But to me, it feels so weird. Like I can't lift my thumb off a table. Holding a glass of water, like this is the shape of my hand. Like it's frozen in this position. I can't straighten my fingers and clap, like little shit. But it's not little. It's like affects everything. Affects typing on a keyboard. Affects everything you do. So I could fucking obsess about that forever, every day, every time it comes up, which is any time you try and do something that you used to be able to do. So to have a glass of water, type at the keyboard, try and use my phone, anything, right? And that's one set of issues, and I have many. And then you try and make sense of it, and you're like, what's going on? And it's like fear, oh God, what's next? It's getting worse. And it spins, it spins, it spins, it spins, and spins. And that spins to the whole like, but I've been doing all this work. The foundation of the work of which is based on 100 books that I've read and all of the Sadhgurus and Joe Dispenzas and Rob Wergens and everybody else in the world that I've studied with. And, in many ways felt like I've mastered so much of this universal wisdom, which is that the body can heal from anything. There's infinite stories of healing and spontaneous remission, and some make sense, some make no sense at all. Why would the body want to kill itself? And then you can get stuck in a place of like, well, I guess all those books are wrong. I guess everything I've done isn't working, and you can spin and spin and spin, and you end up with maybe I should just take my life. And that's where it goes every time, because that's the most 3D way of making sense of what's going on. That like, this life isn't what I want. It's not what I choose. I can't fix it. The whole thing, you're stuck in a fucking place. And it's like, okay, so let's just end it. And then there's that voice that goes, you're not doing that. And you're like, oh, that's truth. So hold on. And you start, I go back to the books. And the books all say the same thing. Health is more than physical. It's also mental, emotional, and spiritual. When you heal the mind and heal the emotions and heal the soul, the body is the last to follow. A farmer plants crops and doesn't stand out in the field every day going, hello, what's going on, guys? Let's go. Let's grow corn. It doesn't work that way. The corn grows when the corn grows. And I reset, I recenter myself. And I go, fear is the root of all that. And if you can control the mind, which goes back to what I said before, the mind is trying to make sense of something that makes no sense. Stop trying to do that. Don't pay attention to the things in the 3D that are not the way you want them to be. Don't spend time complaining about things that you can't make sense of or cannot control. Makes you a victim. You feel like in victim energy. It lowers your vibration. It lowers your frequency. So what do you do? I do whatever takes me to a higher frequency, and I consciously practice that over and over and over again until it becomes habitual. And that is the way we create our lives. So somehow in the middle of the nightmare of ALS, I've learned the metaphysics behind how we create our life experience and how the books, well, neuroscience says thoughts are the electricity that run through the nerves, which are the wiring that connect the brain to the body. So then it's like, oh, maybe the electricity that I've been running through thoughts, through my system, through a lot of trauma, personally and professionally and whatever, has caused, contributed to a body that was like, hey, dude, we've been living in fight or flight for 10 years. We're done. So we're going to play dead, and good luck. The soul will go find another body. We'll do this in another lifetime. And then I go, hold on. No, let's fix it. I will change everything I need to change about myself to change my destiny. And I just get back to doing the work, right? And if I have to do that 50 times a day, I do it 50 times a day. And some days I don't have to do it at all. Some days it's just like, my life is so great. I'm so happy. And some days it's like, Jesus Christ, I can't do that. I used to be able to do that. Will I ever be able to do that again? Nope. Here we go. And get off of those tracks, man. Those tracks don't lead to where I want to go. And so I'm rambling here, but it's all this wisdom that like there is truth and there is mind spinning around shit that is incomprehensible that makes me feel bad. So when I connect to the true stuff and I feel so good, I feel hope again. I feel power. I feel confidence. I feel joy. I feel ease in my life. I go, well, then that's true. And I'm not going to let anybody else label the other thing as my reality and this thing as a delusion. If they want to, go ahead. And so what? Then if I believe in my delusion, then that's my dream, right? The it's making the impossible possible. We all have the power within us to live our impossible dreams, but you got to know what's true and you got to stay connected to it, and you have to reprogram yourself. And this is what Joe teaches so well in reprogramming the mind through meditation. Like, I have to reprogram what my body was used to thinking life was: thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs. And the harder it gets, the more I got to double down.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most articulate, beautiful rambling ever. It made every point made
That's
so
good.
much sense and like so relatable. Yours living an extreme, expression of that teaching you just shared, but like every single person who's going through anything, we all get stuck in that victim, just that 3D delusion of, ugh, woe is me. And then just the fear spirals down and we get stuck and it just shifts everything. And you mentioned getting in the high. Oh, and the other thing I want to say is I just attended this Tony Robbins event and just did this solo podcast. And one of the biggest takeaways is, that we're all on this hero's journey. The best films, the best plays, everything is a hero's journey. The best is always the best underlying theme is usually one of slavery to freedom, and not just in the historical sense, but in the consciousness sense and the spiritual sense. And it says, the greater quality of hero is in direct proportion to the opponent they overcome. So, I mean, based on your resume and your talents and your intelligence and your sensitivity, like you were given this, and obviously we've all heard God doesn't give you more than you can handle. It's like you are this level of hero because you are equipped to overcome the most, you know, gnarly opponent, and you're doing it. And yeah, I mean, that's just like, ah, so that was amazing. Ah, yeah. So how do you like, what are some of the, I'm sure it's shifted over time, but what are your kind of go-tos to raise your frequency and get out of that downward spiral loop of our negative limited programming and raise your
Yeah,
frequency?
well, I mean, right now I went back literally just 2, 3 days ago. I caught myself in like a series of like, I'm complaining for like the third day in a row. And I'm just not interested in complaining anymore. Um, and I went back to the first book I read. I started reading books, like I said, about 2 years ago. Um, Maybe 2.5 years ago. But the first book I remember reading is a little book called $5 on Amazon. It's called The Master Key System. And every freaking page was exactly what I needed to hear. And I go to bed reading it to get myself in a certain state. And I wake up reading it. You can do this with music. It's basically, how do we I spent a couple months working with Brandy Gilmore. She's a pretty well-known healing coach. And she reminded me the importance of positive expectation of positive outcomes. And I think ALS in particular, people just assume there's no positive outcome. So you lose all positive expectation. And now what are you doing? You're trying to make sense of the incomprehensible while you live. It doesn't make any sense. So it's like, no, what if I do the exact opposite? What if I dream up my dream life and then look at that life and go, how do I need to change myself to be that guy in that dream life? How does that guy feel when he's doing the dishes? How does that guy feel when he's hanging out with his kids? How does that guy feel when he's in front of an audience speaking? How does that guy feel about his future? How does that guy and I just realized like, oh, I got a lot of work to do, because it's as within, so without. The world without is a reflection of what's within us. It's not the other way around, which is what I thought, which is what most people think. You chase the sexy bullets on the Wikipedia page, and your whole life will make sense when you get them. And then you get them, and you're like, well, then why are some of the most richest, famous, most successful people just miserable?
Mm-hmm.
Is because that's not the way it works, right? The truth is when you fix this inside, and then for the last year, I'm speaking to audiences, and hey, do you want to make an album? And we do the Impossible Dream with 50 of the biggest stars in the world, with Sting and Lin-Manuel Miranda, and we're raising awareness. And I am cosmically connected with unconditional love and my new partner, and my whole life became way bigger than anything I could have ever imagined.
Mm.
And I know it's a reflection of the within.
Mm.
And the bittersweet thing is you go, when's the body gonna, when's the corn gonna grow?
Mm.
But it's not up to me, So how do I want to spend my time here? And you gotta, like you said, adversity is just the thing. The mind will keep telling you, this is our max point. We cannot deal with any more. And it's just not true. And I watch people that have cancer and just endure extraordinary pain and suffering, and am inspired by them. And people with ALS who endure extraordinary disability. And I go, I don't know if I'd want to do it. And I don't need to know. I don't need to know the answers to that. I don't need to know. I need to stay on the path that feels true within me and do my best. I get to talk to you. We get to inspire people. That's healing for them. It's healing for me. Stay the path, man. Just do everything I can to have the courage to keep going.
Yeah. Amen. And we've heard of instances, however rare, of people healing from ALS. Have you heard? I know we talked about, we were sharing a guy in Jackson Hole, right? Have you found examples to hold on to?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like 3 months into seeing doctors years ago. And I'm like, has anyone ever beat this? They're like, yeah, there's 60 people who've reversed. And I'm like, what? You don't lead with that? You don't give people that kind of hope? Like, you just like wait for them to ask? Why? Well, we don't believe that the reversals are real. Okay. Why? Well, because they don't know what I'm like, who studied? So there's a doctor at Duke University, my alma mater, Richard Vedlak, alsreversals.org. There's now 62. So in the last couple of years, 2 more people. I'm like, what do they have in common? And the doctors are like, we don't know. A positive mindset and a mindfulness practice is so far what they can find. And they're doing their best. And I'm begging them all the time to use machine learning and AI to analyze these reversals and really understand and work with ALS TDI, who has, genetic data on 1,000 or more ALS patients. And let's go, like, I understand hundreds of millions of dollars need to be spent on trying drugs on people. But in the meantime, there's other things. So yeah. And I've spoken to some of these reversals and incredible people, some that were ready to take their lives, euthanasia, unable to move anything. and now they're hiking mountains. So
And can you share
that's,
anything like what was the miracle moment of shift for them, or was it just
I
from by the
mean,
grace of God?
yeah, well, that's that's the $1 million question. I mean, that I love that question, and I've asked the few that I've spoken with, and some are not spiritually conscious at all. Some are like, we don't know, just graced by God. One of them was like, it was all about self-love. Um, a gentleman who just despised himself from a young age and learned to love himself. And now he leads groups, it's sort of ALS support groups, and he hikes mountains. He's in his 70s. And he had a Panamanian healer came to his house. The man passed away, I think. So he was like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm going to Panama.
but his friends got around him and a couple times, and the next thing you know, his muscles were moving again. It was like, wow. Um, there's there was one other. There's a guy I know in Australia who I met up in Canada at a clinic, and he got his voice back, and his hands are starting to work better. There's a guy in Orange County who it was only in his arms, and he's gotten his arms back and all the muscle back. And everyone's doing their own things. There's all kinds of treatments and modalities, and this machine and that machine, and I've tried them all. Um, my thing will come, but the that is a great reminder, right? Every day that like 62 people did it. Even if one person did it, like it's like running the 4 minute mile. Somebody did it, and then all of a sudden everybody could do it.
That's it.
So I'm with you. It's like, let's crack this thing. And for me, that's somewhere in the psycho emotional causality, right? It's like Gabor Mate's book. I forget which one, but he talks about ALS, and he does stories on everybody from Stephen Hawking and Lou Gehrig to, I think he features 10 people. One of them reverses, and she starts as a woman who can't move anything but one finger on one of her hands, and just starts loving that finger. And now she's fine.
Mm.
And so it's like, I knew self-love had a lot to do with this, right? And I found so much self-love through mystical experiences at Joe's events, you know, cosmic stuff that just has happened to me over the last couple of years. And then met, you know, Rob's daughter, Sarah, a couple months ago.
Mm.
And there's this level of unconditional love that I was like, oh, wow, I thought I knew what unconditional love was. Wow, I've got something to learn. And wouldn't it be great if love was the answer?
Well, I just remember because I'm going through, a divorce and all that fun stuff, and I understand how traumatic it can be and how much grief and emotion and anger and all of the things, and then to like experience like a moment or a flicker of like love and like a remembrance of like what that feels, how expansive and energized and buoyant and timeless every cell of your body feels when you're experiencing that kind of connection with someone. And like that's that's where we come from, where we go. That's what the stuff we're made of. We are like little love beams, right? From source. And so to hook into that and to get that resonance and coherence with Sarah and just feel that love. I mean, it just elevates all the energy in your cells. And so like, how do we maintain that? How do we keep that initial experience of falling in love all the time? How do we, that's like my job, and have it without another person. I mean, the other people come in to show us and help us experience that. And I love that for you and Sarah right now. Like, I love it. I want that. But how can I feel that within me and in relation to the world around me at all times? I mean, I think that's like the nugget of healing, but it's only a hypothesis.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing question. And I think it's a beautiful question. I think it's an important one. Um, and I think what you asked earlier, like, okay, well, how do you change your vibration? How do you, when you're in this place? Um, and having been in dark places, um, there's many answers to that question. Like one is like, sometimes you can't, right? You can't go from an abject state of anxiety to right like with a snap of a finger like it feels impossible, so sometimes there's an acceptance and a surrender to just whatever that moment is, and an acceptance that it's just a moment or it's just a chapter in the book. I'm like, Lazar's got a big book here and I'm going to write it someday, and this is a small chapter in it, man. It's an important one, but it's just a chapter. Like, it's not forever. And that helps, finding that thing that, when you ask yourself questions like that, the questions are so much more important than the answer. How do I, fill myself with so much love for myself and share that with the world, that's what the world reflects back to me. And when you ask that question, you'll start getting answers. I mean, I started transcendental meditation a couple months ago, and my teacher ends every 20-minute meditation, right? It's just silence and a mantra. But at the end, she has these, you're coming out of sort of the theta, whatever, right? You're coming out of back into the world. And she's like, you're basically praying to God, let my heart be your heart, let my peace be your peace, let my strength be your strength, all these things. And I would say them, right? Like when I started learning, I'm like, okay, these are beautiful things to say. I say them. And then as I'm meditating for like, you do it twice a day, I started to go, oh, wait, there's intentionality here. So like, let me make my version of this, right? Which is let my strength be, let my strength be your powerful, confident, strength in every muscle and every nerve. I make them so specific to me. And I realize all that is really doing is saying, let me be more like you, source. Mm-hmm. All of it. Let me be more like you. And what is source? To me, it's that I can feel it. It's that when I read that thing and it feels true and I know it and we talk about it and go, that's it. So let me be more like that. Well, what is that? It's infinitely creative. There's no judgment. There's no fear. It's infinite love. It's unconditional love. It's infinitely
possibility.
Infinite possibility. It's infinite certainty in its creative power. And it just is. And then there's like, let me be more like that. And less like a complaining, scared, doubtful, what the fuck's going on with this part of my body today? Great. If it's that small. And then people want the magical answer. And I think the magic of Tony and Joe and these events that we've all been to is like, you're there and the energy is so amazing and the vibration is so amazing and the group together. And then you got to go home, you got to face your life and you got to do it by yourself in bed alone at night, facing your life. So you do that by practicing it, and you're doing that. I mean, I think that's what your energy has always been I've always been so magnetized by you or to you or whatever, is because you're just love light going like, hey man, just trying to figure this out like everybody else. And I think love helps. Let's help each other.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. And I love what you said too, is like, learned from the master TM teacher, and she had her language that she maybe learned from a teacher or learned from a teacher and then tweaked to her own that resonated and worked for her. And then you take it and get more specific to your experience and what you are wanting to reprogram and reinforce in your consciousness. And that's like been a lot of the work too. It's like all these gurus out, external gurus, masters, teachers, these books that we're so grateful to learn from are mirrors reflecting back to wake up our own inner guru, right? We're not supposed to just be shadows walking and like following the footsteps and being disciples of these other people. Of course we can be disciples, but then we've got to put our Aaron Lazar twist on it, our Kelly magic on it. And that's why we're going through these fires, is to, like, maybe your gifts, your real gifts, you obviously have expressed many gifts in your career and life, but then there's some really deep rooted, like, earth shattering gifts that are meant to be expressed, and the diamond needs some pressure to release them. So I just love, like, learn from the gurus, the masters, the teachers, and then run it through your internal guidance system to go, okay, I love 88% of that. Now I'm going to put 12% of my gifts on it, my consciousness on it, and make it work for me, and my truth.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. I think for when the journey started, upon the doctor's opinion, I went on this journey, and it was like, well, there's so much I need to learn, and there's so much I need to change about myself and heal, and I learned so much, and it's a lot of work and this whole thing, and then it's like, okay, well, what if that chapter is done? And my interest, like, we create our own experience, right? Well, what experience do I want to create next? I created an experience of going to Hogwarts School of Spiritual Awakening and mystical, catharsis or whatever for a couple of years. And what experience do I want now? Like, okay, it'd be fun if those continue as part of the journey, but the experience is to fully embody complete health, complete rejuvenation, complete strength, and share that with as many people as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do I create that experience? Well, you just have to be it. Like, that's what that energy, that's what source energy, that's God, it doesn't lack anything. It just is it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized, oh, I created this whole hero's journey of, like, let me go find the depths of, my past. And it's like, okay, great, dude. Like, you don't need to spend time doing that anymore. Like, you did it. And now it's time to, like, move on and just be health and say to the body, that's what we're doing. And if, you know, I've just got to believe the crops grow. You plant the seeds, you reap what you sow. That's it.
Mm-hmm. That vibrant, delicious, perfect stalks of corn, an abundant field of healthy corn, baby.
That's
It's
right.
coming. It's growing.
It is. I did play Curly on Broadway in Oklahoma, so I got to sing that song.
I love it. Well, how can people find you? How can people support you? How can we earn you this freaking Grammy? When do we find out, by the way? When are the Grammys?
That's awesome. Yeah, the Grammys are February 2nd.
Okay.
Voting just ended today, but the music is streaming everywhere. It's called Impossible Dream. It's my debut album. There's amazing people on it. It's duets with Josh Groban and Leslie Odom Jr. and Lauren Allred, and just amazing.
It's amazing.
Neil Patrick Harris. That huge "We Are the World" title track with 50 stars, and then so the album's streaming everywhere. My website, because my Instagram got hacked, so go to aaronlazar.com. And I promise I will get an Instagram back up and running. And then, people have been really kind to ask how they can donate or help. I feel really weird asking people for money, so I haven't done that. People sometimes send gifts, just as a gift. but they're like, well, what ALS organization can we donate money to? And there are many in Los Angeles. The ALS network is kind of the main hub. That there's amazing people there. They've helped giving me equipment, wheelchair, shower transfer bench, whatever it is. You call, it shows up at your door. So they're incredible, and people need stuff like that. So I would say if you're going to donate money, maybe just have an intention behind it, right? If you want to donate to people that are trying to make a drug, there's money for that. If you want to donate to ALS organizations that provide patient support, patient equipment, patient care, there's organizations like that. And on my website, there's a list of, I think, half of the books I've read. So people are always like, what book would you recommend? And I say, that's not really for me to, you just go and look at the list and one will call to you. Although my friend Kelly has an amazing book.
Oh my goodness. You're so sweet.
It's right there.
I made the shelf. Yay. Well, I'm just seeing the number 63. You're my 63. You're it. I love you. And thanks for coming on here and sharing your story and just being so brave and going out and doing it and helping others, inspire everybody, like everybody, with your courage and your story and your light.
Thank you. I love you too. Thanks for having me on, and we'll keep talking. The journey continues, and
Yep.
I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thank you for listening to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. Oh, and if you found this episode inspiring, please rate, review, and share Heal with Kelly so that we can grow our audience and reach more people. We truly appreciate it. Lots of love.